So if you're looking for a wide, deep, barefoot, grippy shoe, here we've got it. So it's the Freet Calver. And in today's review, we're going to look into it and see who it's for and where it actually excels. But first, so I'm Nick for Barefoot Run Review, and I'm passionate about foot-shaped shoes, minimal shoes, barefoot shoes, whatever you want to call them. And I'm trying to find the right shoes for your feet because everybody's feet are different, and we basically need to try and find the best option for you. And like I said, I'm talking about the Freet Calver today, and this is quite a unique option in terms of grip and also in fit as well. And it'll probably satisfy quite a lot of those people who have been asking me for this specific type of shoe. So first, let's get into the fit. So right off the bat, we need to address this point. This is a wide shoe. So we see it's nice and wide through this forefoot here, gives you plenty of room to splay out. But the other thing is it's really wide in this midfoot as well. If you've seen some of my reviews in the past, you might know that I've complained about shoes actually not being wide in the midfoot. So for example, we see that from Viva Barefoot sometimes, and some people need that. Some people have narrower feet, but they still need to have that space in the forefoot display. But also, there are people on the other end where they actually need the width in the midfoot too. And this is where Freet comes in, to be honest. So, like I say, width in the midfoot, width in the forefoot, really nice square taper towards this big toe around here. And then also, it's not too shallow a taper for the little toes as well. It's actually nice and square around here. So you get that nice splay just across all those toes. So that's what you're looking for. That's what you're going to get. And looking into the heel, well, this heel is nice and relaxed. There's a little bit of structure in the heel here, and it's quite deep. I'll get into that in a minute. But otherwise, you can actually use a lace lock in here and wrap this material all the way around, and it seemed to fit pretty nicely. So the other thing, this is a deep shoe. So if you've ever put on, again, Viva Barefoot, maybe Ultras, something like that, and you feel pressure over the top of this foot, or maybe even in the toe box around here, well, that's actually the depth of the shoe. And this Freet Calver is super deep, even to the point of where it's probably too deep for some people. So if you've ever had that problem where you actually feel pressure over the top of the foot or your toes are too close to the top of this toe box, well, this could be an option for you. It could be good. You can manipulate that slightly, like I always say, with a different insole as well. So I've actually tried a few different insoles in here. In the end, I actually had to go with an Ultra insole, which is usually 5 millimeters thick, just to fill out a little bit of that space because it was actually really deep for me. You can see that I've got these laces cinched pretty tight here. So it's something to note. It's wide and it's deep. Oh, and that depth actually goes all the way through to this heel as well. So you sit really far down into this heel, which actually helps give you a really nice heel lock if that's your type of heel. But at the same time, actually rides a little bit high around here. I actually did get a little bit of rubbing around this heel cuff around here. I had to put some longer socks on, never had a problem after that, but it's something to take note if you are sensitive around that Achilles area. We have some nice solid laces in here, so nice and thick, nice and durable at the same time, so you can crank these as much as possible. And also the eyelets going through here that we see, well, it's actually reinforced with some overlays here, so you can crank these as much as possible. That's not going to break through, which is pretty nice. The tongue, actually strangely slightly short, I would say. I often had to just kind of adjust this a bit, especially because I do a lace lock at the top here, so the laces sit a little bit high. So just something to note, at least anyway. In the end, well, I could adjust it to actually fit, so it's okay. And then otherwise, well, the upper is actually it's quite solid, which is great for a trail shoe. You want to be secure in a trail shoe. So if you do have any pressure points, which I'm pretty sure you probably won't because of the width and the depth, but if you do, then, well, it's probably not going to flex too much to the contours of your foot. In terms of sizing, I would say it's true to size, but with a caveat. So I usually go for a US 9, maybe a 9.5 sometimes, and that roughly translates into a EU sizing 42 and a half-ish. The thing is, so Freet actually builds on an EU sizing last. So we're looking at, EU 42, there's no half sizes, EU 43, 44, etc., etc. And the thing is that it's really hard to translate directly into US sizing. A US 9 in their translation actually translates into a EU 43. Whereas I know if you look at Ultra, for example, they translate the US 9 into a 42 and a half. All that's to say, is go and have a look at their sizing guide because they actually have quite a lot of details down there. They even have some information about how this fits in general. I basically went pretty much true to size, and I definitely I do have enough room in the toe box. If anything, because of the width and the depth, I might have wanted to come down a size, but I would then worry that I'd be too close to the end of the shoe. So if you're between sizes, the general advice would be to go up in size rather than down in size in this model. So now it's worth looking at the feel of the shoe. And this is another outstanding area of it. So this shoe comes with a 6mm lug depth, which is super, super deep. I hope you can see it on the camera. The lugs are actually a little bit more hefty and wide than lugs you'd see on other shoes. But I actually found that translated really well into two specific situations. So obviously mud, any type of wet conditions, it was great. There was so much grip in it that I've not had for a very long time in many other shoes. If you are in those muddy conditions, then this is just a no-brainer for you. Another time where I was actually kind of interesting was when there was a bit more hard packed ground, because these lugs are actually quite substantial. They've got quite a big surface area. It didn't actually feel like you're running in a trail shoe with huge lug depth. It felt like a shoe which had a higher stack height. And well, it kind of does, because although the actual midsole or the outsole here that's connecting these lugs together, this calculates to about 3.5mm, so super, super minimal. When you add the lugs on top of that, so 6mm, you get to 9.5. Well, you're at the 10mm range, and well, you're never going to get a true minimal feeling at that range. And it's likely something that's okay for a trail shoe because you need that little more protection. But at the same time, you actually lose a bit of ground feel. So it's something to take note. If you need more ground feel, you want more ground feel, then you probably want to look to a different shoe. A Mesa Trail 2 for me from Zero Shoes is one of my favorites. But at the same time, this has its place. It has its place in the muddy conditions. It also has its place in being a bit more protective as well, which is a real nice compromise. So talking about protection, let's look at this upper now. So the feel of this here is nice and secure, basically. So because these overlays actually run all the way around the shoe, all the way around the toe box, which is semi-hard, I would say. If you kick a rock or anything, you do have some protection there. It's also not the most protective shoe out there, but it strikes a nice balance. And these overlays actually extend all the way around the side here, making a nice structure, I would say, to the upper. And as soon as you get these laces cinched in and wrapped around the foot nicely, it does a good job of making sure that that foot is locked firmly in place and you're not going to be slipping around in the shoe and you're not going to fall over the side of the shoe when you're on these uneven surfaces on the trail, for example. So another thing to talk about is the flexibility of this shoe. And you may be thinking, I've just talked about a lot of protection, a lot of secureness and things like that. You don't get any type of flexibility. Well, that's wrong. So because the connective materials in what I'm going to call a midsole outsole is about 3.5mm, it's pretty thin. That means you actually get quite a lot of flexibility in there. And especially because these lugs are actually spaced wide apart, you can actually get flexibility through these in every single direction, which is great. Obviously, the forefoot is probably the most flexible of all, but also you get that torsional twist and you even get, you can get it in any direction. You get the flexibility in any direction, which is pretty great, actually. So it feels like, it's kind of strange. It feels like a slightly cushioned shoe because of these bigger lugs, but still minimal because of the flexibility. It's actually kind of an odd feeling, I will say. But again, it's geared towards a specific thing, and that specific thing is mud, wet, those types of conditions. Maybe not the drier, rocky, alpine kind of conditions. So how durable is this shoe? So I think this is going to be a mixed bag. So in terms of durability, there's some really nice aspects on here. So I've already talked about the upper round here, which is really nice and secure, but at the same time is pretty protective and actually protects all of this mesh layer that we see here. If you scrape against rocks or anything, you're likely going to be nicely protected in that area and it's not going to gash any of that material. Pretty cool, pretty nice. At the same time, we see stitching all around the outsole here, coming all the way around. So it's not just glue that's holding it in place. You've also got the stitching as well. So another plus point in terms of durability, at least anyway. Obviously, it's something you do have to talk about, especially when we're looking at a outsole with such deep lugs. Well, it's going to wear down quickly if you go on those harder surfaces. Obviously, don't run in roads on this. This is not what it's made for. If you're running on the rocky terrain, well, yeah, it's going to wear down a little quicker. At the same time, because these lugs are actually a little bit wider around here, you actually get a little bit more surface area that touches the ground if you are on those surfaces. And that will reduce the wear in comparison to other lugged designs. Pretty cool. I would say it's a kind of an interesting design to go with, and actually a benefit here when it comes to the durability. I'd say the only downside I've seen up to now is maybe a couple of little weird manufacturing things. So, for example, I've seen on the inside of one of these, it's not this one, but there was a loose thread just coming from the inside where it's stitched into the footbed. It's not a concern, maybe something just to keep an eye on. And we can see the same thing fraying on the stitching around the side here as well. I'm not going to say that it's going to be a problem in the long run. It's something I've noticed. It's not got any worse either, but you just got to take note of things like that. The other thing to actually factor in is actually the price of this shoe. So it comes in at about $110, 100 euros, I think it is. And compared to other barefoot minimal shoes on the market, that's a really good price point. And the quality that I'm seeing from the materials, at least, super good for the price point that it's coming in at. And also looking at the full outsole, rubber outsole here, well, it's a lot of material again for that kind of price point. So pretty happy about it in terms of that. So in conclusion, the Freet Calver, it's a pretty awesome shoe if you're looking for something for those muddy conditions, you need that extra grip. I absolutely wish I had these a little bit earlier before my race a few weeks back because it was muddy and I did fall and I did slip everywhere. I don't think I would have in this. It would have been pretty good. At the same time, we've got to be cognizant that this is a wide, deep shoe. If you do not have that foot, you will be swimming in this shoe. And I know a lot of you out there have been asking for that, and specifically people coming from the US shoes that need that little extra width, especially in that forefoot, or maybe from Viva Barefoot and you're finding that the depth isn't where it's just not deep enough for you. Well, this is actually a really interesting option for you. And there's other shoes in the Freet lineup which actually may work too. And I'm going to get to those reviews in the coming weeks and hopefully we'll find a model for you at least. But for this one, well, it's the Freet Calver and well, it's that very specific shoe, probably born out of the muddy hills in Yorkshire. I can completely understand why this works in that situation. So it's pretty cool.